So we're starting Be'ez Hashem, the 30th Shir in Sugyas Vayol Moshe, and we're on pokeach ivrim Dugma Ches, page 17, page Yud Zayin in the Sefer. That's page 28 in the PDF. So we're up to the paragraph here, V'harichacha habrura b'yoser. Okay, so he's talking against what the Rebbe said in Siman Kuf. I believe it's in Siman Kuf. Maybe we should chazer it again before we start. Yashal Shvuas Siman Kuf, right at the end of the Siman. He says, "V'Rabbeinu Yoina b'Maseches Avos Perek Aleph Kosev al Mishnah di Al Tischaber l'Rasha." Mishnah in Avos says, "Don't join up with a Rasha." Rabbeinu Yoina in his commentary, he says, "Shehu Oynish Gadol she'ein k'moisai." Joining a Rasha is a tremendous punishment. Why? Ki achet hachomer pasha boy asa avera achas. If you do one avera, okay, so you do one avera, you get the oynish for that. Avol zeh, but this guy who joins a Rasha, b'chol ha'avera she'oisa Rasha yesh lo chelik bohem. He's going to get a share of everything the Rasha does. V'nimsa oisa chatoim rabim gedolim v'atsumim. He's going to get all the sins of the Rasha. V'im yadav asurim v'lo yinenu mehem. He didn't even have a choice to do them or not to do them, and he didn't have any hanoah from them. The oil Rasha, the oil l'shchenai. Woe to the wicked, woe to his neighbor. Ki hu chayte u'shchenai menugad. He's sinning, and his neighbor gets punished for it. Shekein hu mefurish be'avos der Abnasan. Kol hamadabik l'rishaim. Aval pi she'eino oisik ha'maseim. Noitel schar kayotze bohem. Anybody who joins Rishaim, even though he doesn't do what they do, will get their reward, meaning their punishment. The hamadabik l'tzadikim. If you join up with tzaddikim, even if you don't do what they do, you get their reward. Ad kan l'shaynai hakadosh. That is what Rabbeinu Yoina says. The nuchal lihispoinin mizeh dinam shel kol elu hanasim chavrei hakneset. Hu kal v'chomer ben b'noi shel kal v'chomer. That from this you can see that anybody who joins the Knesset gets the avera of every single Zionist in the Knesset. Okay. Ad kan vayol Moshe. So now, pokeach ivrim asked like this: "Ve'arichacha habrura b'yoser shekol hadiburim al inyan hischabes derushaim b'knesses." I'm on the paragraph starting ve'arichacha. This we did last time. Arichacha habrura b'yoser, the most clear proof. Shekol hadiburim al inyan hischabes derushaim b'knesses b'shem ho'admer misatmer hu sheker muchlat. The clearest proof that the Satmar Rebbe never could have said such a thing, that hischabes derushaim applies to the Knesset, is shaharei kol tinok b'Yushalayim. Every little child of Yushalayim, v'oid, and other places too, yoidim. They all know sheho admer misatmer hiter lihishtatif b'bchiras l'iriyah. The Rebbe was matir to vote in the city elections. V'zois b'nigu v'das lavlori and manalei ho'eda. The Eda, the people from the Eda who wrote not like that, they wrote that you can't vote in any election in the Zionist state, but the Rebbe didn't hold that way. V'shaharoiv hagadol Mechavrei Iriyash Yerushalayim Heim Oizvei Torah. Even though you're allowed to vote in Yerushalayim, even though most of the mayor and all the people in the government of the city government of Yerushalayim are not from, right? Umachalei Shabbos Gam Zois Yodu Lakol. Everybody knows that. V'im Kain Lahecha Nelam Ister Yischabes Derushalayim. So how could the Rebbe be matter that if that's Yischabes Derushalayim? V'hechan hu Ha'im Yesh Mekoyim Shu Mutter. Is it sometimes mutter, sometimes aser? Gam ladas mi shekori l'chol shtadlanos the toiva as a klal b'shem ischabris. If you're going to say that being mishtadal and going to the Knesset for the sake of the klal is called ischabris derushaim, then how could it be mutter here? Yeah, there's no effect there. Okay?
And in the courts, achas the courts.
Yeah, he says to look right there. We didn't get to that yet.
So did he say that you're allowed to go to the local election?
Yeah, so that's true. The Rebbe never said the farish that it's aser or mutter.
So what do they do?
Take a look over here.
So what do they do today?
I don't know. I don't think they vote today.
And also you could have
came out there trusting now. Because today they made a new law that you have to swear your loyalty even by the city or something.
So perhaps we could also ask this the same question.
So yes, it's true. The Rebbe didn't say it's aser to vote in the city. Take a look. Hakdama to Shilas Teshuvas.
But he never said he can't vote in America, did he?
No.
So I think if Beck says don't vote. So
where
does he get
true.
that from?
Well, he has his opinion. I once asked him why, but that's nothing to do with this. The page 31, page Lamed Aleph of the Akdama. He says, "V'ulam umas zois lo'haya daitoi noicha mechum
I don't
rashonis."
have that.
That the Rebbe didn't like people who were machmir and things she'ein lahem makor musmach. They don't have a good reason. Ubital oisam b'shtei yadayim. B'yomroi ki gam mizeh tzrichim lisrachik. You have to stay far from made up chumras. Ukesha'al al perek nidon habechiras l'netzigei ho'iriya be'eretz Yisrael. When it came up to vote for the city elections, v'hayu harbe sheratzu sherabeinu yastar behechlet. Many people wanted the Rebbe to aster it. K'moya bechiras l'netzigei memshala. Aval hu biachas. He said no. Shehem shnei dvarim nifradim. Voting for the Knesset and voting for the city are two different things. V'ein biyadenu lahamtzi isurim chadashim. We can't make up new isurim. V'chol echad yisnaig b'mkoimoi kafi ru'us einei hamoyer b'oisei makam. So everybody should follow whatever the pokeach of his city says. The Rebbe didn't say Aser or Mutter, he just said follow the pokeach of his city. So, back to his kasha, that's his chabros the Rishonim.
So where the pokeach in the city said no.
We have the show. What's the name from the show?
Who asked him this kasha? Pokeach ivrim. I don't know the name. It's a sefer be'ilam shem. So the bells are chassid. We don't know exactly who it is.
Not your Cohen?
What?
Not your Cohen?
No, that's a different sefer. We learned that already a while ago. Ma'amar Chacham. Ma'amar Chacham. Yeah. All right. Let's see his next kasha, and then I'm going to say what I think the teretz is. And he says like this. Turn the page. Yeah. Agav ro'isi lahavi bazeh das Torah mimar nachafetz chaim. Zchusa yagin aleinu ba'hagdaras inyan yischabers the Rishaim. I want to bring down a story from the Chavetz Chaim. Kafisha Sipur Mar Natzadik, going Natzadik, Rebisser Zalman Meltzer Zatzal.
Where is it?
I'm reading these little small letters. Hine, Poland, B'shnas Tafresh Tzadik, Darshu Rashi Miflagas HaChivonias Minitziga Agudas Yisrael Man Toyalas HaYehudim L'is Ached Miflaga Yehudis Achas Gedoyla Keneged Miflagas HaNachrim. That in Poland there were parties. There was a party from the Mizrachi and there was a party of the Aguda in the Polish parliament. So they decided, let's get together and make one big party. So Umar Chavetz Chaim, Zchusi Yagin Aleinu, Shalach B'shaitu Michtav L'Rashi Agudas Yisrael. The Chavetz Chaim sent a letter, and it says, the Michtav Nidfas B'Michtavi Chavetz Chaim Yigeres Kuf, Uboy Ma'bia Hisnagdusaya Muchletes. He said, I'm against that. L'Ichudi Miflagus HaChavshim. Sounds like it was Chavshim. I thought it was Mizrachi. And he says, Mitam, why? She'aster lihischaber l'Rasha. You're not allowed to join with the Rasha. Pasuk, like we're saying now. The Hevi Sham is a pasuk, Divrei Yomim, Behischabercha im Achazyahu, Parat Hashem es Maasecha. That when Yehoshaphat joined with Achazyahu, Hashem got angry at him and he failed. Ayin Mizeb, Avester of Nasan Perek Test. He said the Charedim should be in one party by themselves, nothing to do with the Friar Jews. But after a certain amount of time, after this, he asked a different question. If you're telling us that you're not allowed to join and make one party with the non-religious Jews, can move up parliament. How are you allowed to sit in the Polish parliament with the exact same koifrim, even though they're a separate party, but you're still sitting next to them and you're dealing with them? Chabris means you have a common interest, you're working together. But if you're on a different party, you have opposite interests, that's called fighting, that's not called joining.
Wasn't he punished for joining with Achazia, Yehoshaphat?
Yeah, Yehoshaphat was punished for joining with Achazia. And he's saying because he had a common interest with him. He was doing the same thing that Achazia was doing. He wasn't fighting him. Okay, umamish ke'en zeh amar mar nechazanish. Okay, be'inyan ha'yeshiva b'knesset sheyesh b'zeh ma'avak v'lo yischabers. He says joining the Knesset is fighting and it's not joining. Okay, so what's the answer? Both of these questions are leading in the same direction. He's saying, why is it mutter to go to the city? if you're mischaber the Rishonim. And the Chavetz Chaim said right here that if you're not in the same party with the Rishonim, then how are you fighting? That's not called fighting the Rishonim. So, we go back to something we read a few weeks ago. This is a sefer Shamna Shel Chayr from Menashe Philip. And he explains over here in response to the Steipler had kasha. Remember the Steipler's kasha? That why was it allowed to be in the parliament for Shimon Sofer, who was in the Hungarian parliament? Why was that allowed and being in the Knesset is not allowed? The Hungarians, the Goyim do Avodah Zarah too. So you're joining people who are doing Avodah Zarah. What's the difference? If it's Goyim or you?
Well, you mentioned Wicked, only with the Avodah Zarah, not Jewish Kofim, there's a difference.
Okay, that's the only difference? Just because they're Jewish Kofim? So he says a difference.
You mentioned something.
Yeah, I know, it's true, but he says the more you say, it's different. Look what he says. He says, Ve'emes ein kan shum dimyan. Page Reish Samach Gimel. Ein kan shum dimyan ki umas ha'olam huter lahem liyaseh melucha. First of all, Misad the Etzem Medina, a Jewish state is aser, but a Goyish state is mutter. Lifnei b'yas Mashiach. Ve'enam melucha oiveres b'ma sheyesh bati avodah zarah bi'artzam. And the Hungarian country or the Austrian country is not doing anything wrong by having avodah zarah in their country. V'gam einam mitzuvim l'chukim al pi chukei Torah. They don't have to make their laws based on the Torah. Ki mal pi nimusayim. They can make their own laws based on what they feel like. V'gam huter lahem lilchaim b'yad amam b'yartzam. They're allowed to fight wars, which is not true of the state of Israel. They themselves happen to do avodah zarah. Zeh aveira pratis shalahem. That's just a private aveira that every guy does, but it's nothing to do with the country. She'ein lo zeh shaychus im hamlucha klal. Okay, so I think this is the key to the problem here. When the Rebbe speaks about his chabers the Rishonim, he's speaking about when the Rishonim are, when you're joining what the Rishonim are doing. You're joining a group when the Rishonim are actually doing that thing. But like running the state of Israel is a Neveira. But over here, running the Austria or Hungary, that's not called Neveira. And the same thing, going back to the city elections. The city elections is they decide how many garbage trucks they're going to be, and they decide when the mail is going to be delivered, and they decide questions like paving the roads. They're not there for Zionists. They're not there to do anything to do with making laws. The Rebbe said that the state of that the city governments don't make law, only the Knesset makes law, and they're not there to do anything to do with Zionists or anything to do with an Aveira. So therefore, that's not called Yischabes Yerushalayim. They happen to be Mechalei Shabbos, but we don't care. That's a separate thing. It's a private Aveira. Okay, now, same thing on the kasha from the Chavetz Chaim Meister. The Chavetz Chaim Meister he's saying the same thing. You're allowed to be in the parliament, even though there's a Freie party over there too. You're not helping them accomplish their goals. You're fighting their goals. But over here in the Knesset, you are helping because the parties do join together and they do fight together for whatever they have in common. So that's called Yischabes the Rishonim because you're joining together with them in whatever they do. And you made up mitchila that if they vote you out and they vote for something, then you're going to support that because you're part of the same coalition as them. Okay? Mm-hmm. Now, besides all this, it's pashut that this is not the Rebbe's main reason for astering being mishtatif in the Knesset. Obviously, the reason is because it's an aveir to have a Medina, and it's an aveir to fight wars, and it's aveir al shvuos. There's a lot of reasons why the Rebbe had for that. This thing about Yischabes the Rishonim is just one paragraph in Bayom Moshe, which he's making trouble about. So I'm just answering up that. But provided there's a lot more reasons why it's a problem. Okay. By the way, in this sefer Shomrim Laboiker that I mentioned. He wants to tie in a little different. He says that the ikar reason of the Satmar Rebbe was because of the Shalosh Shvuos. He says the Eda and the Neturi Karta of the Eda, the Neturi Karta controlled the Eda at that time. Their main reason was Yischabes the Rishonim. So they taka astered every city election too. Mashenkin the Rebbe, who held that the main reason, this Yischabes the Rishonim is just a sniff. The Rebbe brings it in also as a reason, but it's not the main reason. But I think since he brings it, you still have to answer up why this doesn't involve that aveir. All right, let's go weiter. Okay, so dugma tes nitpal leoiste avera. So he says, he brings down Vayal Moshe, also Siman Kuf, where he speaks about this this inyan of the third aid. You know, the sugya in Makkos, Daf Hey Amud Beis, about the third aid. So take a look at Vayal Moshe inside first before we read him. U'Maseches Makkos Perek Aleph Mishnah Zayin. Al pi shnaim edim oy shloisha edim yumas hameis. Im miskayem estoredis b'shnayim lama pir dakastu b'shloisha. Why does the Torah say 2 or 3 edim? If you only need 2 edim, what's the third one there for? Rabbi Kiva Omer loy ba hashlishi lahakel ela lahachmir alav. V'lasleis dinoi k'yoytze beilu. That the purpose of the third aid is because that if they become edim zoymimim, he gets the same din as them, even though he wasn't needed. The Torah gives a punishment for someone who joins people who do an aveira. Then halachas kama v'chama yishalem schar l'nitpal l'yoyse mitzvah k'yoyse mitzvah. Kol shekain, it's going to apply when you do mitzvah. V'hinei zeh ho'ed hashlishi lo yahani midi. This third aid who came to say edus on somebody, and it's a false edus. He's saying false. He's trying to get someone killed unjustly. He didn't actually accomplish anything. The ho'edus. The kivin to miskayem is the way this b'shnayim havitrei kameya. 2 is it. There's nothing more after 2. V'ein b'maisa hashlishi klum. The third guy is not adding anything. Mikol makom dinoi be'oisai oynesh k'moyo edim. But he still gets the same punishment. Shemiskayem is the way this alpiyim. Ba'avur shenitpal aleim, because he joined them. The nimna imahim, he's counted with them. After lo yahani ma'asav muma. Mikol shekain b'mi shenitpal liyos chaver bein chavrei oisei akneses. He says the same thing when you join the Knesset. You're not just joining, he says it's a kal v'chomer, because here it's worse. You're not just joining the members of the Knesset, you're doing more. Because there, 2 edim is enough. The third aid is just extra. But over here, according to the laws of the Israeli government, you have to have 120 members. They can't make any laws without having 120 people. They're all necessary. They're not just joining, they're actually there, they actually needed to be there. So it's going to come out that the Aguda members who are in the Knesset are getting the same oynish as Ben Gurion and all the other chaver there. Okay? Alright, so let's see his kasha now. He asks good kasha sometimes. Let's see his kasha. He says, it's not similar. You're trying to compare joining the Knesset as an Aguda member to being a third witness. Okay? He says, it's not possible the Rebbe should write such a thing. Why? Even though he's not adding, because he's a third aid, he's not necessary, could work without him. What is he saying when he comes to say the false aidus? What did they do? They came to say Reuven killed Shimon, right? And Reuven didn't really kill Shimon, so they're getting Reuven killed. And now he added on, I also saw Reuven kill Shimon. So he's doing the same Aveira. He's falsely getting Reuven killed. You don't need him. Okay, it's true you don't need him, but he's still doing the same Aveira. And let's say if one of those 2 Edom would leave, for whatever reason, or be puzzle, whatever, then he would be the one to take his place. That's why the Torah considers him like he joined people doing an Aveira. Shahari halacha l'maisa asta k'moisam. He actually did what they did. Mamish begufo edus. Ashen kain netzigei acharedim b'knesset asher kavanasam muchachas b'toich maaseim shekol matarasam hu lilchaim neged hakoifrim. That the good members of the Knesset, they're trying to fight against the koifrim. They're trying to stop them from doing whatever they do. B'midas hayachoilis, whatever they can do. Milach chukim neged hadas, from making an anti-religious law. Ulechazik es moistus haTorah, and they're trying to get money for their moistus. How could you say they're doing the same thing like that third witness is doing? Okay, now he goes back to that mice with the Chassam Sofer. All right, but the main kasha is that he's saying that the third witness is trying to get the guy killed unjustly, and here the Agud is trying to stop the Tziyonim. That's his kasha. No, let's see the next kasha before we try to answer. He says, "Masha kosav shalafi achoik tzrichim livchor oisa minyan shel chaverim." This that the Satmar Rebbe says you have to have 120 members. Uvilade zeh einam yicholim la'aseh shum davar.
Who said this?
The Rebbe said it in Vayom Moshe. He
20
said
members of what?
120 Knesset members. He said a kal v'cholim, right? He said the third edus is not necessary. 2 is enough. So you're just coming for nothing, and still you get punished. Over here, where you have every single Knesset member is necessary, and if the Aguda guy wouldn't be in the Knesset, they wouldn't be able to pass the law. So it comes out the Aguda guys helped them pass the laws, the anti-religious laws. Yeah. So he says like this. The He says the Charedim are now going to cause anti-religious law. It can't be that he wrote this. Why? It's against logic and it's against the facts. Why? Mishum shekola million shel 120 who rak davar yitzugi u formali bolvad. It's only a formal law that they have to have that. Shari yadu lakol. Everybody knows shegam kashiyesh rak 40 arbaim chaverim b'knesset mitoicha me'av yastrim. Even if you have 40 people in the Knesset at that time, the rest are sitting at home. B'chol zois machrim chukim tamid al pi aroiv hanimtza b'knesset. They make a vote on whoever's there, and that's it. V'lo tzrichim klal 120. It's unusual that 120 people should actually show up on a particular day. How could you blame the Aguda guys who are sitting at home or in the Beis Medrash or whatever, right? How could they be blamed for what's going on in the Knesset? It doesn't even look like he's part of it. That it's not shaykh to blame him for what happened. But pilis bechiras hakneset umemshala ein tzarich as chavrei hakneset achredim klal klal. He says you don't really need them. Why not? Ki harei l'chol miflaga. Every party has reshima arucha. The way it works is they all have a bunch of candidates. Let's say they expect to get 10 votes, 10 seats, but they have 20 people waiting for the seats. So in case they get 20 seats, they'll use 20 people. They have a long list. Shal netsigim rabim harbe yoister me'adar shlehem v'lo yitzur b'shum oifen sheyechsar lahem miminin ha me'av yastrim nifar m'knesset. They're not going to have less than 120, because if the Aguda guys would stay out of it, then you'd have a bunch of other whatever, a Yesh Atid would come in and fill the space. You can't stop the koifrim from doing anything just by staying out of the Knesset. All right, so that is his timer. That's what he says. So basically, I want to say it like this. First of all, let's take a look at Vayom Moshe Simon Pei Zayin. It would help if he had another by Yom Moshe. So this is the first simon where he speaks about voting. After he finished proving that the Bedina is Aser and the Shalosh Shvuos have been violated, now he starts into voting. He says like this: Me'ata hayala adas. Could anyone think she'iyeh eza heter li'ishtatif af b'shutfis kolduhu la'avera chamura kolkach? How could anyone think that we should be a partner in this terrible avera? Ubifrat she'yesh b'zeh gam minus kfira rachmana litzlan, that the avera involves kfira. Ve'ein shum safek. There's no doubt ki kol ha'mishtatif be'ezu avera dinoi kishar ha'shutfim. If someone joins an avera, he has the same law as the rest of the shutfim. V'gam ki hayois shelafi achoik tzarich liyos oisoi mispar hanivcharim. That according to the law, you have to have 120 members. Shebaloi zeh iev shelahem laso shum choik. Without that, they can't make any laws. Im kein kol ha'mekabel mishra be'oisa mispar. Anyone who gets a membership, a seat, who me'oisan shal yadam nasu kol ha'chukim she'oisim. He's the one who's causing all the laws to be passed. V'havi kol echad v'echad mehem shutef gomer b'chol pratim ma'asehem mehachel v'yad kala. That he becomes a member of everything they do from the beginning to the end. Af b'shah she'einenu sham. So he speaks out. Ma'afuki the pokeach ivrim. He says, even when you're not there, you're still part of the Knesset. Why? Ki kulam hayu b'oista mispar. They're all part of the number 120. Shemi mibaladai iyaf shalashum choik mechuki hamemshala. You can't have any laws. Ve'ein nafka mina bein echad v'chaveiroi. There's no difference between one member, like an Aguda member who voted against the law, and the whatever, Labor, Likud, who voted for the law. No difference. Okay? That's what he says. So basically the Rebbe is really addressing this problem. He's saying it doesn't matter if you're there or you're not there and they voted without you. If you're one of the 120 people, you're making the law be passed. Okay, now secondly, what he's asking, the main question he's asking is, the third witness is trying to do something bad. So of course he's going to be punished along with the two witnesses. But saying over here, the Aguda members are trying to do something good. That's really his main kasha. But let me just look at the Gemara for a second. The Gemara in Makkas said, Nitpal le'oisei avera ki oisei avera. Yeah? So this Eid Zaymim, let's think about it for a second. Pokeach was asking. He came, he tried to do an Aveira. What did he try to do? Try to get the guy killed wrongly. Try to frame somebody. Mm-hmm. So he's coming into the Beis Din, he's saying, Reuven killed Shimon, and he's lying. So he's doing something wrong. So why do you have to come on to Nitpal Yoisei Aveira K'oivi Aveira? Why do you have to come on that he joined Rishaim and the Chabris and this kind of thing? Why can't you just say, he tried to do an Aveira? He is running there. Like let's say the two Adam were running down the street to get to Beis Din. He was running too, but he was a little slower than them. They got there first. They said Adis first, and he came in after them, and he said his Adis, and he was too late to be counted as an Aid. So he's a third Aid. Okay, he's a third, but he's not from the real Adam. So, but he tried, right? He's running and he's trying to do it. So the Chayra, he should get the Oynish because he's trying to do it. Nor of us. What do you have to say? That we don't look that way. The Torah doesn't look at it. There's a klal on the Gemara, Kedushin Lamates. It says that Ein HaKadosh Baruch Hu mitzarfa l'maisa. Machshava ra. If a yid has a machshava ra, if he wants to do an aveir but he didn't actually do it, HaKadosh Baruch Hu doesn't look at it as if he did the aveir. Ein HaKadosh Baruch Hu mitzarfa l'maisa. By Yidden. By Goyim, it's not like that. But by Yidden, if they wanted to do an Aveira and they didn't, they're not punished for the Aveira. So what are they punished for? They're only punished for the Nitpal, because he joined them. But the actual Aveira that he was trying to do, for that he's not being punished. Right? Mm-hmm. That's what you see from this Gemara. Okay, so over here, the same thing. So, in other words, it comes out like this. Pokeach is asking, you can't bring a raya from the third witness. The third witness was bad. He was a Rasha. He's trying to get someone killed. The answer is the Gemara doesn't say that. The Gemara doesn't say that he's getting punished because he's a Rasha and he's trying to get someone killed. The Gemara says he's punished because he joined the Oivre Aveira. The fact that he's trying to get someone killed, that was just trying. He didn't actually succeed. So he's not going to get punished for that. So for all intents and purposes, he's the same as the Aguda members. He's the same as the Yahadut HaTorah, whatever it is today, right? He's the same as that. Because they're trying to do something good, he's trying to do something bad, but his bad thing that he tried to do, he didn't end up doing. So the Gemara doesn't count that against him. What does it count against him? That he joined. And therefore, they're also joining. They're also joining. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Second of all, really, the problem that he raises is the Aguda is Lamaisa trying to defeat the legislation. So why should they be blamed for a law? Let's say today they're trying to pass this thing with Geiris. That's the latest thing, right? There's a bunch of things. Even the Aguda put out a statement that they're upset about it, right?
Yeah, there's a joke.
Okay, but they're trying to make that every Rav in every little city could decide on Geiris, which means that there's some people who are very liberal and they'll accept anybody because it's a political agenda. They want to get as many possible goyim to change into Jews so they could count them as Jews, and they say, oh yeah, we have a Jewish state. So that's how they want to solve the demographic problem. So all the Frum are against it. All the parties, Saib Mizrahi, Saib Aguda, everybody's against it. Everybody's upset because they don't want to have a yichus problem. They're going to have a whole mess, right? For doyers to come.
It's a joke. So it's a joke. They're not really.
What's a joke?
And they're not. It's just when they make believe, they want to show that
they want to show that they're against it, but
this.
Okay. But
even before they had fake Geiris, they would take in these Indians from these jungles in Peru, bring them over to Israel, and convert them, and on condition they join the army. So it's a joke.
Anyway, so they're against it. So if they're voting against it, isn't that better than voting for it? Or how could you blame someone? His main what's bothering him about this Satmar Rebbe is how can you blame someone for doing something that he tried the opposite. He tried to vote against it, and he ended up getting outvoted. So good, he was outvoted, but at least he tried, right? Why is it not good to try? Why is it not good to try? So take a look at this. So back to Shamna Shel Torah by Rabbi Menashe Philip. He tries to explain a little more in detail what the Rebbe Shtita was. Page Reish Tanach Beis, over here. He says, after he said first that the Medina itself is Aser and the Aguda Knesset members are not fighting the Medina, they're just fighting certain laws. So that's the main problem, that they're not against the Medina, they're not against, they stand for Hatikva, they vote for the wars, they have no problem swearing loyalty to it, they have no problem with any of that stuff. They're just there to fight certain small rules, certain passage of certain legislation. Okay. Now, v'af be'elu achukim hapratim, even in these laws, in these particular laws, shehema nilchamim imakoifim, that they do fight against the koifim, gam bechukei oven ele dinam keshutfim. Even there, they're considered partners. Why? Af im hisnagdu l'chach, even though they were opposed to the law. Mikol makom harei mitchila hiskimu lahayesoid. When they joined it, they joined with the condition shahachoik yuchra al pi roiv deis. That when they take a vote, that will be what determines the law. And they swore allegiance to the law. The majority wins. The das hamiyut betela. The minority becomes batal. It becomes as if the minority holds like the majority. That's the lumdus of roiv. Kind of like by kashrus. If you have a pot of food, you have kosher chicken soup and let's say 40%, 60% kosher and 40% treif chicken soup, min b'mino, it's mixed together. Okay, so midaraisa, min b'mino is batal b'roiv, so it will be completely good. And even the 40%, even though you're eating something that's treif, it's still batal. It's still like it becomes like it's kosher. Derabanan, it's not, but even by Derabanan, if you have 3 pieces of meat, let's say you have 1 treif and 2 kosher, you're allowed to eat them. You're allowed to eat from that pile. Some say you're not allowed to eat all 3, but you're allowed to eat from that pile of meat because you consider that the meat was nepach, it became like the roiv. So he's saying the same lumdus goes with the Sanhedrin, and the same lumdus goes with the Knesset lahavdil. That if you're in the miut and they vote against you, you're like the roiv. V'hapsak yoytze mipi kulam b'shava. The decision comes out from the mouth of all of them equally. Ayin Toisvis Bavakam Chaf Zayin. He explains the lamdas the same way, and then he brings other svarim, and then he says, "V'yoyster mizeh." He says more than that. Who b'nidon hakneset shehusna kein mitchila, that they actually made up like that. It wasn't just a law like a halacha, but it's actually an agreement that you sign. V'chol hakuf chaf chaverim markivim es koyach hakneses. All these 120 members make up the Knesset. V'noisnim l'chukeim es toikef achoik. They give the power of law to the laws. V'chayev lohem es kol ha'am. And they make them obligatory on the people. V'ein shum nafkamina bein chavrei ha'oppositzia l'chavrei ha'koalitzia. Even if you're in the opposition, but you're considered part of the law. So that's the lumdus. But stam, you have to understand what's the svara. Even when there's lumdus, you always have to understand why, right? There's always there's the vas and there's the farvas. So I was thinking, pshat could be like this. Pshat could be, even in the Bezdin you have to know, right? Why when you oppose something, why are you, and you're outvoted, why are you considered like you were in favor of it? Why? Like people say, when you have a minyan and 6 of them are mispalalim, that's enough, right? Because they're a roiv. But you don't have a minyan. So, Ramosha made a joke once. He said in his tshuva, is a mikveh good if it has 21 saw? Because it's a roiv of a mikveh? It doesn't work that way. You need to have the whole thing, right? You need to have the whole thing. So, here's what I want to say. That the pshat is like this. Why does a bezdin need? Let's say a bezdin has 23, and you have 12 against 11. So the 12 are enough to pass the law, to kill the person or whatever, right? So if 12 are enough, why did the Torah require 23? If roiv of a minyan, go back to the minyan. If roiv of a minyan is enough, then why did the Torah require 10? Just have 6. Like Ramosh is asking, a mikveh should be allowed to have 21. What's the vort? The vort is, no. You need the whole Sanhedrin there, because you need all the deis of all these people. They all have to give their opinion in, so that when the 12 defeats the 11, let's say the 11 say, not guilty, and the 12 say guilty, those 12 take into account the shita of the 11. So it's the shita of the 11 was part of the decision to say guilty, even though the 11 said not guilty. But the decision to say guilty was taking into account what they said. In other words, they didn't do a good job defending the defendant. If they killed the defendant after 11 people said that he's not guilty, obviously those 11 people didn't have a very good argument. So their argument failed, it lost, it was batal v'roiv. So the vort is like this. That the Knesset is the same thing, Havdil, even though it's not the Torah, but they made up. Why do they have to have 120 people in the Knesset? Why not just say we need 61 people?
And it's a Knesset or something.
Yeah, I know, but I'm saying, whatever number you're going to pick, I'll ask you the same kasha. Let's say you want 200 people in the Knesset. I'll ask you, why have 200? Just have 101. The 101 is enough to pass the law. Yeah? So the answer is no. They understood the concept also. They want to have, the majority should listen to the minority, and take them into account, and then if they decide against them, it's ke'ilu they all decided. So the pshat is, if you're in the Knesset, let's say the Aguda, they're in the Knesset saying, don't pass this anti-religious law, and the rest of the Knesset doesn't listen to them. So it's ke'ilu they were batal because their arguments weren't good enough to convince the majority, and they failed. So if you're not there at all, if you're not part of it at all, then you didn't fail. You can't, just like it says by the lottery, right? You got to be in it to win it, so you got to be in it to lose it. If you're in it, you can lose it because the majority could outvote you, right? Mashenkin, if you're in it and you lose it, then Mashenkin, if you're not in it, then you're not part of that losing minority. So it doesn't show anything. It's like we spoke a few weeks ago once about the Marabach, right? The Marabach says, I wasn't in your group when you voted on making smicha. So you can't join up. You can't say that your shita passes because you didn't take me into account. So the same thing, if I'm not in the Knesset and you don't take me into account, it's not ki'ilu I said anything. I don't have any blame in what you do. Mashenkin, if I go in there and I say my opinion and you still outvote me, then that shows that I'm not good enough, that my reasoning wasn't good enough to pass. It's like, is the Jewish people supposed to have a Knesset that makes anti-religious laws? Obviously not, right? So if the Jewish people had the Knesset and they make anti-religious laws, even after they heard the religious and they still outvoted them, that's a bigger Chilul Hashem, it's a bigger Aveir than if the religious would stay home and not be there. Because if they're not home, they're not there, then they didn't hear them. Okay, so then maybe they didn't hear them. If they would have heard them, maybe they would have not said it. But now that they're there and they still outvoted them, that's ki'ilu that they
were. Or something?
That's ki'ilu that that they're also to blame for what's decided.
Like
Eglarufa is Daniel Shafku. Is that right? We're not. We didn't do anything wrong. We didn't do anything
but
wrong.
Still, because
you mean you're saying that I could say the same thing? If we stayed home, we could say Daniel Shafku Saddam Hazeh. When they're in the Knesset, they can't say that because they're not really potter because they tried and they failed. Mm-hmm. So if you're going to fail, don't try. That's his argument. Okay, we'll stop here.